Hey everybody, Graham Sherman here with Tool Shed Brewing Company. Now, as you may or may not know, our tagline here is handcrafted beer, best served with a story. And today I'm going to share the story of Prairie Pride, one of the greatest stories of any beer we've ever brewed here in Tool Shed. So for those that don't know about the old Belgian style of brewing, the lambic sour style of beers, it was such an incredible romantic story of how the Belgians used to make beer. You can imagine they didn't have access to laboratories and dry ice shipments of yeast to keep yeast from a lab sent to a brewery like we do now. They had to capture that wild yeast out of the air of what was growing along the Belgian countryside while they were brewing. So they had a vessel up in the top of their brew house called a cool ship. When they were done boiling the beer, they'd force the beer up into the loft of the brewery, open up the windows and let the beautiful natural Belgian country air flow through. They called it spontaneous fermentation, and the tastes and the aromas and the flavors of that Belgian countryside were imparted in that beer with what yeast was inoculating that batch. Now, of course, we're in the northeast of Calgary. I don't want to let the diesel and manufacturing fumes of an industrial park flow through my beer. But what if I could make a beer that was completely Albertan using the same techniques of that old Belgian style? Wouldn't that be cool? A truly, entirely Albertan beer. Albertan water is some of the best on the planet for making ales. Just that mineral content and that makeup of that water profile is ideal for brewing ales. We already know we have the greatest barley on earth right out our back door here in Alberta. So what if we could get some Alberta hops and that Alberta barley and that Alberta water and find some Alberta yeast and make the world's first truly, entirely, 100% Albertan beer? So that's what we went after. I built one of those cool ships and I mounted it to the back of my truck and I drove through the countryside and out on these beautiful barley farms and through the bushes that were blossoming down along the river. I left that vessel at a crappy old ancient barn for the hot part of the day, hoping I'd get all sorts of bugs and different types of wild flora. I left it underneath a lilac bush all night. And by the next day, it was just teeming with Alberta. I think there was a couple dead bumblebees in there even. But then we took that sample of yeast, that sample of wort from that cool ship, we let it ferment out. We took that yeast sample to the Olds Brewmaster College, and we got them to isolate cell by cell every single strain of yeast until we found 15 different types of yeasts that could potentially make a beer. We took every one of those samples and we tried to make a beer with each one. Of those samples, most of them were pretty disgusting infections, but 3 of them were really good. And of those 3, one of them was a beautiful, unidentified, wild Alberta yeast strain that brewed a beer. So what a victory it was to be able to send that sample down to Escarpment Labs in Ontario and have them add it to the yeast bank. So anybody now can buy the wild Alberta yeast strain that we captured that day in the back of my truck. It's called TS Wild 003. What a cool thing, right? So this beer, Prairie Pride, speaks to our pride for making beer right here in amongst the best ingredients on earth for brewing beer. We're super proud of the water that we have coming out of Kananaskis country that makes this beautiful beer so crisp. We're so proud of our local farmers that grow the best wheat and the best barley, our local malt houses that are malting that wheat and that barley right down the road, and even new hop farms that are growing just north of Calgary. So this beer truly is all about our pride for being Albertans, and we hope you enjoy it.